Throughout history, the single quality standard across every living creature on this planet is fear. All share fear, and we succumb to it at one point or another. However, how quickly we forget that it is not fear that shapes humanity, as fear itself isn't worthy of concern. It is who we become while in its clutches. Will you be proud of that person? Will you forgive them? Will you understand why they felt the need to do all the things they did? Will you even recognize them? Or will the person staring back at you be what you have feared from the start? I suppose we all find out sooner or later. Human history has advanced so much in the last 1,000 years. From the times of fairy tales and make-believe, humanity has evolved far beyond its own comprehension. Human history has proved that mankind can adapt, and with change comes significant new advances in society, knowledge, technology, and above all, humanity. Human history continuously evolved through time against any and all hardships and roadblocks that stood in their wake. Revolutions that industrialized the world and set in motion a chain of events that nobody, not even the brightest minds of the human race, could ever think of happening. Over time, multiple companies, businesses, and government corporations were created and commenced multiple ventures into advancing human technology, commerce, warfare, and other ventures. The main companies are the following. Black Mesa. Founded in 1950 and helmed by the United States government, Black Mesa undertakes research in various fields, from standard scientific research to radiation, rocketry, theoretical physics, lasers, experimental propulsion, hydraulics, robotics, hydroelectricity, genetics, zoology, applied mathematics, and a vast spectrum of research into the chemistry and all manners of physics research. The study is primarily conducted in the Black Mesa Research Facility and includes pure and applied science. In addition to this legitimate research, several secret projects are carried out at Black Mesa, deliberately left vague. A large amount of classified study is carried out, including developing high-tech weapons and defense systems, researching extra-dimensional travel, teleportation, and studying a so-called border world to Earth. Most of this is shrouded in black ink. Aperture Science. Founded in the 1940s by Cave Johnson, originally named Aperture Fixtures. Initially, the company was primarily dedicated to manufacturing and distributing shower curtains, a low-tech portal between the inside and outside of a shower, with Cave Johnson winning the Shower Curtain Salesman of 1943 award. In 1943, the company's name was Aperture Science Innovators. While this was initially done to make their shower curtains sound more hygienic, the company's focus would soon shift to actual science. Cave Johnson purchased a large abandoned salt mine in Upper Michigan, where Aperture Science's Enrichment Center would be built. However, there was at least one alternate location in Cleveland, Ohio. From late 1940 to early 1950, Aperture Science began its comprehensive testing and research practices. However, this was done illegally. They were also the second largest contractor after Black Mesa for the Department of Defense from 1952 to 1954. By the late 1960s to early 1970s, however, Aperture Science became financially unstable thanks to prior court hearings regarding Aperture Science's involvement with the disappearances of astronauts, likely due to many of them not returning from testing. Yet the company still functioned as generally as it could. Eventually, after an experiment gone wrong with moon rocks, Cave Johnson fell deathly ill, and his then-assistant Caroline was instructed to develop her consciousness into a computer. This began the development of the genetic life form and disk operating system, an artificial intelligence used to oversee scientific testing. In 1998, GLaDOS was brought online for the first time during Aperture Science's annual Bring Your Daughter to Work Day, and instantly became self-aware and homicidal. GLaDOS flooded the enrichment center with a deadly neurotoxin, killing most scientists. Aperture Science was effectively shut down after this incident, and public news was that the company had gone bankrupt. However, the underground enrichment centers had been placed into a permanent testing cycle by GLaDOS, unbeknownst to the public or governments. World Marshal Incorporated, a private military company based in Denver, Colorado. World Marshal Inc. is the largest PMC in the world. Multiple U.S. senators in the past have had grand juries investigate connections with the PMC. it also acted as the de facto government over Denver, even going as far as to control the police forces of the city, in large part because of their being subcontracted out to them, due to small government legislation passed by the late state senator, slashing the state budget. As such, they also had the privatized police force kill off civilians who committed actions World Marshal disapproved of, and cover it up as a casualty from being caught in the crossfire. Besides their status as a PMC, they were also the largest supplier of military equipment, leading to them teaming up with the Delaware-based PMC Desperado Enterprises. Although its main headquarters was stationed in Colorado, it is confirmed that the company had offices worldwide. Maverick Security Consulting Incorporated, also known as MSC, and founded by Boris Vyacheslavovich Popov. They are a private military and security company located mainly in Nevada, although they had a field operations office in Denver, Colorado, and an HQ at Sochi International Airport. Although technically a PMC, various Maverick members preferred to call themselves private security providers, due to the negative stigma applied to PMCs. In addition, their primary methods of operation were supplying security to their clients, specifically of the deterrence kind. Desperado Enterprises, also known as Desperado Enforcement LLC. They are an American PMC composed of voluntary soldiers based in Delaware. Working closely with World Marshal Incorporated and its governmental ties, most of the former HECU soldiers ended up joining the ranks of Desperado. Most of their business was handled outside of the states, with their finances being driven by a separate company located in St. Kitts and Nevis. Their primary jobs were targeting places undergoing reconstruction efforts and ruining them. However, they've also been connected to the drug trade and human trafficking. Several of the PMC members were also forced to join due to being unable to provide a livelihood, otherwise due to the current costs of living, some even holding deep fear and remorse for the actions they had to commit while in the group. Although several of them were ex-military, not all of them were. Randall Industries, a highly respected business managed and founded by Marcus and Jasmine Randall. The company works closely with Spring Pharmaceuticals and PMCs, such as World Marshal Incorporated, and other security-based companies such as Maverick Security Consulting Incorporated on military-based contracts, and as a supplier of products. The company was involved in weapons and armor manufacturing, new technology and advancements in combat stimulants, and medical aid for soldiers, security workers, and private military companies. Spring Pharmaceuticals, ran by Arashi and Fubuki Spring. Spring Pharmaceuticals is a globally recognized medical company with heavy relations to Randall Industries, multiple smaller research facilities, and even ties with the United States government. Spring Pharmaceuticals is the world's leading medicine and healthcare company, producing most, if not all, of the world's medication and healthcare treatments, and having locations all around the world. However, they also perform mass tests on new experimental drugs and medication in secret, and, at times, have been involved with government-wide attempts to create weaponized medicine or endeavors at cures to create superhuman soldiers for countries. A primary tool of this has been via the ampules, which allow for slowing down mental conditions whilst also providing some people with psionic powers, though most do not survive the initial testing phase. Northern Petrol, the lead provider of fuel-based liquids and gases such as petroleum, including gasoline, diesel fuel, biodiesel, and ethanol. As such, they have control over the whole market of energy-based products and, due to this, control most of the world's oil rigs, mines, and drilling operations for more fuel to sell. With the limited knowledge of fossil fuels, the company has also dabbled into renewable energy sources, primarily via wind turbines and solar panels, to keep the market on these products once fuel deposits run out on Earth. Ceylon Electric Power Company, also known as Ceylon Inc., a company managed by President Heidegger Ceylon that was initially a tiny weapons manufacturer. However, the advent of a global electrical energy company requirement has provided a power vacuum, which Ceylon greedily enveloped at the first chance it got. Establishing a vast network of power stations and acquiring multiple already established electrical company firms led to Ceylon becoming the lead distributor of electrical energy worldwide, making it quickly and widely available. This reach has also led to the company becoming a mega-corporation with significant underhanded influence in societal, infrastructural, and political spheres. The company also operates in genetic engineering, space exploration, and the creation of an elite and localized task force, for them known as the Enforcers, to act as a privatized military for their own dirty work under a black veil of secrecy. Sunset Scavenger Container Service, a local recycling, compost, and landfill collection and disposal company. Initially based in San Francisco, due to the high demand for a unified system and the positive references before this for the company was able to offer a worldwide service which overtook most government-owned garbage or trash collection systems to allow further funding to be provided for governments around the world. Human history remains relatively untouched by this drift from reality until the mid-1990s to the early 2000s. While developing teleportation technology, researchers at the Black Mesa Research Facility discovered an extra-dimensional realm, formerly known as the Border World, but colloquially referred to as Zen. Attracted by scientific curiosity, especially toward significant exotic minerals found on the alien world to aid their research, Black Mesa's Lambda team launched multiple survey expeditions to the Border World to collect flora, fauna, and mineral samples from the Border World. The environment on Zen was incredibly hostile. Thus, these expeditions were considered highly hazardous and often resulted in the death or capture of dozens of researchers. Despite this, many Xenian animal and plant life samples were retrieved for study in the Sector E biodome complex of Black Mesa, whilst testing on the minerals gathered was performed in the Sector C test labs by the Lambda team. Aside from key personnel in the Lambda team, many of Black Mesa's scientists were not apprised of the trustworthy source of the samples and live biology retrieved from the Border World. As such, many of the creatures discovered were initially thought to have surfaced from either outer space, evolutionary adaptation, or the Challenger Deep. In 2000, on May 16th, a cataclysmic event occurred during a scientific experiment at the Black Mesa Research Facility in New Mexico, USA. This event was dubbed the Black Mesa Incident or Lambda Incident by most, but its consequences were felt worldwide. An event known as a resonance cascade caused an opening in the space-time continuum, which allowed creatures from another dimension to enter our side, and vice versa. These events began happening all around Earth, from the depths of the sea to the heights of the sky. Monstrous creatures designated as both Zen species and Race X species began appearing around Earth in smaller yet equally dangerous events known as portal storms, which caused immense damage to almost the entirety of Earth. Multiple attempts to stop this event happened. The first was a mix of surviving scientists and the USA's brightest minds attempting a resonance reversal using an orbital satellite to seal the tear. But this failed, and it was deduced that something powerful was holding the rift open. This made the researchers realize this was not an accidental occurrence, but a full-on interdimensional invasion. Understanding the actual threat of the situation, the United States government got directly involved and commenced multiple operations to seal the tear, including the deployment of hazardous operatives known as the HECU and Black Ops units. United States military, including the Air Force, Navy, and Marines, were all sent in to keep a perimeter and silence any witnesses. However, such a worldwide affecting event could not be contained and hidden from the public eye. Shortly after that, a Mark IV thermonuclear device was planted and detonated, destroying Black Mesa and much of the surrounding area, ending the conflict and, to the knowledge of all humans who lived, sealing the tear, completing the events. However, this is just what the public was told and made to believe. In reality, this was not what stopped the events of the Black Mesa incident. The salvation of humanity was performed by multiple groups, but the prevailing parties involved in the incident, its beginning and the eventual closing of the tear were Dr. Gordon Freeman, Dr. Isaac Kleiner, Dr. Eli Vance, Dr. Gina Cross, Dr. Colette Green, Dr. Richard Keller, Dr. Walter Bennett, Dr. Rosenberg, Dr. Simmons, CPL, Adrian Shepard, and Barney Calhoun. Initially, under the design supervision of Dr. Rosenberg, A device known as the anti-mass spectrometer in Test Lab C-33A was created to study the retrieved mineral samples from Zen. This was headed by a research team led by Dr. Eli Vance, Dr. Richard Keller, and Dr. Isaac Kleiner. On May 11th, research associate Dr. Colette Green received a memo indicating that the supervision team was particularly interested in the newly acquired mineral sample, GG 3883. Green's own analysis of the sample revealed unexpected spectral fluctuations. However, it was identified as the most prominent and purest sample the team could retrieve thus far. In violation of standard anomalous materials handling protocol, the supervision team ordered the new selection to replace the original chosen sample, EP0021, in the experiment. On May 16th, the day of the experiment, in a deviation from standard analysis procedure, the Sector C research team was ordered to overclock the anti-mass spectrometer and run its power resolution at 105%, much higher than the scanner's safety buffer zone of under 90%. While some personnel expressed consternation at the breach of protocol, others supported the move since the extra resolution would allow them to garner more data. Two lead researchers, Dr. Eli Vance and Dr. Rosenberg, vehemently protested the decision, but were overruled. These instructions came directly from the office of the Black Mesa administrator, Dr. Wallace Breen, who was allegedly keen to gain conclusive results from the experiment. However, some personnel suspected the interference of a third-party source, who, according to Dr. Vance, had also personally delivered the new sample, GG 3883, to the labs. With the researchers' concerns overruled, the anti-mass spectrometer was prepared at the new power level of 105%. Because of the immense power output required, Black Mesa experienced several minor brownouts across the facility over the day. The experiment was initially delayed because Dr. Gordon Freeman, the manual operator of the anti-mass spectrometer, overslept. However, this delay was convenient for the research team, who used the time to undertake further preparations and recover from a facility-wide system crash that resulted in a minor data loss. Following Dr. Freeman's arrival, research associate Dr. Gina Cross delivered the mineral sample to the test chamber, while Dr. Cross's colleague, Dr. Green, operated the anti-mass spectrometer from its lower maintenance level. Lead researcher Dr. Eli Vance was contacted by a third-party source who claimed to say, "Prepare for unforeseen consequences." Dr. Vance briefly contemplated aborting the experiment, but ultimately decided against it. Freeman activated the anti-mass spectrometer without incident, and the supervising researchers increased its power level to 105%, as stipulated. One of the researchers monitoring from the control room noticed a slight discrepancy in the readings, which was reported, but dismissed his concerns as it remained within acceptable parameters. The mineral sample arrived in the test chamber, and Freeman inserted the delivery cart into the anti-mass spectrometer's plasma stream. The immediate result was catastrophic. The plasma stream agitated the exotic matter contained within the sample and triggered an overload in the equipment, causing several minor explosions. The monitoring team attempted to shut down the device, but to no avail before a stray beam of plasma destroyed the control room, killing most researchers and injuring those who survived. This resulted in a resonance cascade. Most scientists, researchers, and security personnel who survived, including Dr. Freeman, attempted to get help. However, a local electromagnetic pulse caused by the cascade disabled all external communications. Luckily, under Dr. Keller's direction, a group of survivors, including Dr. Gina Cross, Dr. Colette Green, and Dr. Rosenberg, reached the surface, where they transmitted a distress call to request military support containing the alien life forms. HEQ were deployed with troops, ordnance, and establishing checkpoints to stop the creatures. The troops overrode the Black Mesa announcement system, placing it under military command. Aside from containing the aliens, the military was also instructed to silence surviving witnesses to the experiment. The military response was initially highly successful, quickly taking control of the facility, establishing fortified outposts and checkpoints, and dispatching platoons deeper into the facility to contain the alien incursion. Troops also successfully captured Dr. Rosenberg, the designer of the anti-mass spectrometer, who had transmitted the distress call, and sealed him in a railway car for interrogation. However, not all were successful, as alien planes shot down some aircraft. One of these aircraft shot down had Corporal Adrian Shepard. A low-ranking security officer, Barney Calhoun, recovered from unconsciousness following the resonance cascade and successfully freed Dr. Rosenberg. Rosenberg aimed to use the old teleporters in the abandoned A-17 prototype test labs to escape from the facility. Most scientists, researchers, and security personnel who survived, including Dr. Freeman, attempted to get help. However, a local electromagnetic pulse caused by the cascade disabled all external communications. Luckily, under Dr. Keller's direction, a group of survivors, including Dr. Gina Cross, Dr. Colette Green, and Dr. Rosenberg, reached the surface, where they transmitted a distress call to request military support containing the alien lifeforms. The Hazardous Environment Combat Unit were deployed with troops, ordnance, and establishing checkpoints to stop the creatures. The troops overrode the Black Mesa announcement system, placing it under military command. Aside from containing the aliens, the military was also instructed to silence surviving witnesses to the experiment. The military response was initially highly successful, quickly taking control of the facility, establishing fortified outposts and checkpoints, and dispatching platoons deeper into the facility to contain the alien incursion. Troops also successfully captured Dr. Rosenberg, the designer of the anti-mass spectrometer, who had transmitted the distress call, and sealed him in a railway car for interrogation. However, not all were successful, as alien planes shot down some aircraft. One of these aircraft shot down had Corporal Adrian Shepard. A low-ranking security officer, Barney Calhoun, recovered from unconsciousness following the resonance cascade and successfully freed Dr. Rosenberg. Rosenberg aimed to use the old teleporters in the abandoned A-17 prototype test labs to escape from the facility. Meanwhile, Dr. Freeman managed to reach the Sector D high-security storage facility, where he learned of the military's true mission to silence the facility personnel. Reaching the surface, Freeman discovered that airstrikes were in progress, compelling him to retreat back inside. Under the instruction of Dr. Keller, Dr. Green and Dr. Cross attempted to reactivate the anti-mass spectrometer's damping locks to seal the rift. However, their attempt was ineffective, leading to Dr. Keller's belief that an alien force was holding the split open. In collaboration with Dr. Keller, the Lambda team concocted a plan to launch a satellite into orbit, which, when used in conjunction with a prototype displacement beacon, would help seal the rift. With a military air traffic lockdown preventing the launch, Dr. Cross and Dr. Green successfully overrode the lockdown and allowed the rocket to be launched. However, the takeoff was aborted when military personnel captured the control room at the high-altitude launch center and killed all its personnel. Forced back into the facility, Dr. Freeman was informed of the Lambda team's plan to seal the rift, and they requested his aid in resuming the satellite launch. With the Black Mesa transit system disabled, Freeman was forced to proceed across the facility on foot. Entering the Silo D propulsion test labs, Freeman's progress was halted by a large tentacle which had nested in the silo. Freeman activated the necessary fuel and power lines and fired the rocket, killing the tentacle. By this time, the military had identified Freeman as the scientist indirectly responsible for the resonance cascade and marked him a priority target. The troops set multiple ambushes along his route using the tracking devices in his HEV suit. Intending to ride an old, still-functional monorail network from Sector E materials transport to the high-altitude launch center, Freeman made his way deeper into the facility, where he found Hazardous Environment Combat Unit forces clashing with a gargantua, which quickly dispatched the troops. Freeman lured the beast between two electrical generators and activated them, delivering a fatal shock that killed the creature, allowing him to proceed despite the Hazardous Environment Combat Unit performing frequent ambushes. Dr. Freeman reached the launch center, where he launched the rocket prepared by Dr. Green, Dr. Cross, and Dr. Keller. Following the rocket's successful launch, Dr. Cross and Dr. Green manually raised and activated the displacement beacon, allowing Dr. Keller to initiate a resonance reversal. While the reverse lessened the effects of the interdimensional rift, it did not seal it entirely due to the interference of a powerful alien force from the other side. Unable to neutralize Dr. Freeman and suffering heavy casualties, it became clear that the Hazardous Environment Combat Unit and cleanup operation was failing. In response, the U.S. government deployed a Black Operations Unit to Black Mesa, with orders to destroy the facility with a thermonuclear device and silence all witnesses no matter the cost, human or otherwise. Shortly after the Black Operations team arrived, two Vortigaunts designated R-4913 and X-8973 successfully retrieved several stolen exotic minerals for their leader. Meanwhile, Barney Calhoun managed to escape the facility after aiding Dr. Rosenberg in successfully establishing the Xenian teleport relay. Using the old teleporters in the A-17 labs, they ran from the facility in an SUV with their colleagues, Dr. Walter Bennett and Dr. Simmons. As Dr. Freeman attempted to make his way over to the Lambda complex, he was ambushed and knocked unconscious by two Hazardous Environment Combat Unit troopers. However, instead of taking him to the surface for interrogation as ordered, the two soldiers stripped him of his weapons and dumped his body into a trash compactor, intending to lie to their superiors that Freeman had been killed. However, Freeman, who regained consciousness in time, escaped the compactor and evaded the Hazardous Environment Combat Unit by proceeding through the Biological Waste Processing Plant and navigating to the Advanced Biological Research Lab. Freeman discovered that many Xenian creatures were forcibly contained and subjected to invasive experimentation and study long before the incident occurred. Freeman began his journey across the surface by disconnecting the military presence in the lab. Meanwhile, the Xenian invaders had breached the surface in large numbers, turning the Black Mesa Desert into a war zone. Xenian forces used extremely maneuverable organic aircraft to contest air superiority of the region. These aircraft shot down large numbers of V-22 Ospreys conveying Hazardous Environment Combat Unit reinforcements to the facility. Despite the heavy fire support rendered by M1A1 Abrams tanks, M2A3 Bradley IFVs, and AH-64 Apache gunships, the Hazardous Environment Combat Unit forces suffered heavy casualties in personnel and material, compelling them to abandon their mission and initiate a retreat from Black Mesa. Using the chaos to his advantage, Freeman successfully fought through the warring belligerents and reached the Lambda complex. Corporal Adrian Shepard, one of the few survivors of his team, had awoken in the Black Mesa Medical Lab. Shepard makes his way through the facility, and he stumbles upon the Black Mesa transit system. After getting off the tram, he encounters a strange alien, unlike the one seen before in the facility. Adrian Shepard finally finds the Hazardous Environment Combat Unit at the nearest extraction point, where he is informed of the Hazardous Environment Combat Unit withdrawal. However, the evacuation was woefully incomplete, leaving behind many troops, including CPL Shepard, and much of their equipment. Shepard has to go back into the facility after being abandoned. To cover their retreat, the Hazardous Environment Combat Unit authorized repeated airstrikes from F-16 warplanes, inflicting heavy damage on the facility. Meanwhile, CPL Shepard encountered several troops from his company who agreed to abandon their mission to neutralize Dr. Freeman and the remaining Black Mesa personnel, arranging instead to search for an alternative escape route in collaboration with the surviving science team personnel. Shepard makes his way through the facility and reaches the surface once more and sees a door towards the Lambda complex, but it is locked. A medic is beside it, who asks for an engineer. CPL Shepard finds a vent and sees Black Operation units. He discovers they are not friendly towards the Hazardous Environment Combat Unit, so Shepard kills the units. He finds an engineer that needs medical help and opens another locked door to go back outside to lead the medic to the engineer. Shepard goes deeper into the facility and finds more Black Ops. He and two other Marines kill more Black Ops, and they get closer to the Lambda complex. While most Black Mesa survivors had congregated in the Lambda complex, the hostile creatures had overrun much of the facility. Dr. Freeman accessed the reactor core and successfully reached the team of scientists waiting for him at the tip of the reactor. A handful of surviving personnel, who had established a fortified position in one of the staging areas for the Border World survey teams, had long since deduced that the resonance reversal had been unsuccessful due to the influence of a powerful alien force on the other side, and concluded the being had to be killed for the rift to be sealed and the invasion halted. The team agreed to the plan and used the Lambda Complex's massive teleportation device to send Dr. Freeman to Zen. Mere seconds after Freeman's teleportation, an alien attack in the teleportation chamber severely damaged the teleporter. CPL Shepard, who had arrived in the section just before Freeman's departure, fought off the alien attack. Shepard saw this, and instead of going into the portal Dr. Freeman had just gone through, he decided to travel to a different outlet on the other side of the teleportation room, which transported him to an area of Zen. With help from the Border World's low gravity and bounce pads, the corporal jumped on some platforms floating in the dimension until he got to another higher portal teleporting Shepard to Black Mesa. While the situation at Black Mesa continued to deteriorate, a new and hitherto unknown foe appeared through the interdimensional tear, known only as Race X. This new foe began to attack everything in the facility, including Xenian creatures, to clear a path for a terraforming creature hoping to colonize Earth. After reaching Waste Processing Area 3, CPL Shepard and a contingent of Hazardous Environment Combat Unit troops encountered and engaged a giant pitworm. Shepard killed the creature by dumping toxic waste into its lair, and then proceeded to the surface. Upon reaching the surface, the remnants of the Hazardous Environment Combat Unit, Black Operations teams, surviving Black Mesa personnel, and the two alien invaders were engaged in a vicious five-way battle for supremacy. Forced back underground by the fierce fighting, CPL Shepard discovered the U.S. government's solution for the incident. The Black Operations teams that had been deployed had armed a thermonuclear bomb in the ordnance storage facility, intending to destroy the facility and wipe out the invaders. Shepard then deactivated the device but witnessed a mysterious individual reactivating it. With his path blocked, the fate of Black Mesa had been sealed. Proceeding further, Shepard found that surviving Black Mesa and the remaining Hazardous Environment Combat Unit personnel collaborated to prevent a giant alien creature from settling and terraforming Earth for its own species. While the beast had killed the team sent to contain it, Shepard managed to blind and kill it, halting its invasion of Earth. Shortly after that, the thermonuclear device detonated, destroying Black Mesa and much of the surrounding area, ending the conflict. Shepard had awoken in a V-22 Osprey following his victory, far from the facility, confronted by a mysterious individual seemingly affiliated with the government. The individual informed Shepard that he was a dangerous witness to events at Black Mesa. While a directive had impelled the individual to dispatch Shepard, he had instead detained him indefinitely after admitting an admiration for Shepard's survival ability. Meanwhile, Freeman arrives at Zen after teleportation at the Lambda complex, and is almost immediately contacted telepathically by the Neolanth, the creature holding the portal open, who responds to Freeman's arrival with, "Comes another." Freeman uses his long jump module to traverse the floating islands of Zen, encountering many of the aliens teleported into Black Mesa in their natural habitats, and the remains of HEV-wearing researchers that came before him. Freeman arrives at a large central island and finds a small portal, which he steps into and is teleported to the Gonarch's lair. Freeman battles and defeats the Gonarch and her headcrab minions. He continues his journey across Zen, with supplies running short, wasted on destroying the Gonarch. Freeman traverses an expansive series of Zen islands, coming in contact with many Zen hostiles, and eventually finds himself in an alien grunt cloning facility. Within the factory, enslaved Vortigaunts are forced to work, but do not attack Freeman, perhaps to subtly rebel against their masters. After much fighting and interception from alien grunts and controllers, Freeman comes across a large, ominous portal on a series of floating islands. Upon entering the portal, Freeman faces the Neolinth, the holder of the interdimensional rift, the one responsible for the enslavement of the Vortigaunts, and the leader of the Zen forces. Freeman engages the Neolanth in its lair. As he battles the creature, it teleports him to several sub-caverns filled with Zen creatures. Freeman continuously escapes these caverns and destroys the Neolinth's shield, allowing him to destroy its vulnerable brain. As the monster dies, it floats toward the ceiling and explodes in a giant green blast that overpowers his senses. When he comes to, he is confronted by the G-Man, who had stripped Freeman of all his weapons while he was unconscious, under the excuse that most of them were government property, but states, "As for the suit, I think you've earned it." Both are transported to various locales around Zen, while the G-Man praises Gordon's actions in the border world. He explains that his employers agree with his assessment that Gordon has limitless potential, and have authorized him to offer Freeman a job. The final teleportation takes Gordon to the same tramcar he rode on May 16th, apparently flying through space at immense speed. Gordon accepts this offer by stepping through a portal and, floating in nothingness, hears the G-Man's voice one last time. "Wisely done, Mr. Freeman. I will see you up ahead." Overshadowed by the public eye, government cover-ups, black ink, burned documents, and the buried rubble of the facility, the truth behind Black Mesa remains a mystery to all who live to this day. Only the survivors know what happened, but legends amongst some alien species speak some, if not the whole truth. Regardless of who ended the conflict, things have a different ending. Whilst the main threat was gone, portal storms remained an uncommon phenomenon on Earth for the foreseeable future. After the Black Mesa incident, Earth has left a shell of its former self. The world is under siege by a new, unpredictable weather pattern that brings chaos and bloodshed in its wake, and alien creatures who do not care for human life, but wish to make the world their own. A grueling uphill battle for humanity began. Shortly after the incident, world governments enforced martial law in critical areas such as ports, capital cities, and central populous regions in a power struggle to protect what is theirs. Most who lived in the countryside were rounded up and brought into the towns, known as safe zones, with government-controlled infrastructure and facilities, including public services, healthcare, and education. Few chose to brave the charities of the new adapting world with their head held high and facing it instead of cowering behind steel walls and government protection. Crucial meetings between key planet players, such as the European Union, Russian Federation, and the United States of America, amongst others, took place, initially with countries condemning the events and blaming America for the cause, comparing the situation to that of the Chernobyl disaster of 1986. However, this was quickly absolved when Dr. Wallace Breen, the former head of Black Mesa, announced that this was indeed a human error that was not calculated, pinning the blame on the scientists involved, primarily the indirectly responsible Gordon Freeman. Due to the lack of evidence stating otherwise, most of the surviving members of the Black Mesa incident were deceased or had gone into hiding due to government interference and cover-ups. This was declared, and the U.S. was not formally charged. World governments got to work, commencing repair work across their entire countries, stabilizing economies from further collapse as much as could be done, and performing much work on repairing the world. The damage had been done, and nobody could argue that what happened was one of the worst tragedies in human history. Still, they had to rebuild. It was the nature of life and how things were. With new wildlife settling in on Earth, the species of animal ordinary across all the wildlands quickly depleted, and a vast majority of Earth's creatures became extinct as it was used as a food source, both by humans and the invasive species. However, smaller and more common species were slower taken by the new species that replaced them. After a few years, around 2003, Earth was seemingly on a path to recovery. Most rural areas had to be evacuated, and cities were almost overflowing, increasing homelessness, temporary housing, and shelters. The world's militaries were set to fortify perimeters and provide humanity with safe zones where they could live peacefully, whilst the remaining outside areas were overtaken by different kinds of alien species and fauna. A primary alien race, known as the Vortigaunts, established hundreds if not thousands of small encampments around Earth, and instead of being openly hostile towards humans, kept to themselves and, when interacting with humans, would try to be as homely and respectable as possible. In secret, however, several governments and organizations got to work to attempt various inhumane experiments over the years to come, forcing thousands of individuals to become live test subjects as the threat of these new alien species lingered. They needed their own armies of superpowered humans, humans who could keep up with the ever-evolving world and not be left on the sidelines. These projects would yield results, but most would have failed. It is rumored that a few surviving individuals returned to society, but what was experimented on them, or if it did anything, remains to be seen or made public. In mid-2003, world government officials met to discuss the state of recovery repairs, believing that a world combined effort was for repairs to make a faster, more steady recovery. With the considerable agreement, most of Earth's countries formed a combined alliance called the Earth Defense Force, with the current main goal of providing equal aid across the world by utilizing as much of the military forces around Earth as possible. They set to work to restore the world to its former glory. However, this also had the adverse effect of further stretching military forces all across the globe. With the world recovering from one of the worst events to shake it, nobody could have predicted what would happen next. In late 2003, with Earth's governments weakened by the storms and arrival of Xen flora and fauna, their efforts were only marginally beginning to get better. An effort started by a new contender to Earth was started. Attracted to Earth by the dimensional rift inflicted by the Black Mesa Incident, an alien empire called the Combine began launching invasive forces towards Earth. They did this by first conquering Xen and using its portal storms to teleport straight to Earth. By doing this, the human population was caught off guard, especially since recovery efforts after the Black Mesa Incident had only begun to pay off. Earth's militaries were already stretched to the breaking point due to the Earth Defense Force a few months prior, and as such, the entirety of Earth's military forces were defeated in only 7 hours. The Combine used superior technology and numbers to overwhelm the human staff, using the portal storms to transport their troops all around the Earth simultaneously, combined with orbital and aerial bombardments to decimate Earth and its populations. Beforehand, the Combine sent smaller forces to whittle defenses down little by little instead of sending a full occupational force. This kept the world government's guard down on these events, making this invasion increasingly deadly. These strikes hit everywhere on Earth and left no stone unturned. For example, the United Nations Secretariat building in New York was heavily damaged by space-bound projectiles during the war. During the war, the former Black Mesa administrator, Dr. Wallace Breen, had believed to have discovered a way through means still unknown to communicate with the Combine directly. The United Nations then authorized Breen to negotiate peace with the invading extraterrestrial empire by any means necessary. Breen negotiated peace by saving the remainder of humanity at the cost of their freedom. Breen was then declared by Combine to be the interim administrator, which served as more of a political puppet ruler of the remnants of Earth. This negotiation, which could be considered little more than a plea for mercy, ultimately marked the end of the 7-hour war. Recovered is a copy of the speech provided to the Times newspaper informing Earth of its fate.
Citizens of Earth, every man, woman, and child, it is time that you learn the truth about the future of our planet. For those unaware of who I am, my name is Wallace Breen. I once had the honor of serving the United States, nay, the world with the Black Mesa Research Facility and those who dedicated themselves to pursuing science and evolution. Regrettably, prior controversy about the company was called out and rectified like this. However, regardless of the past, the words I am about to speak will hopefully bring closure and relief to those who listen. The United Nations were unable to negotiate with the forces that have suddenly appeared on Earth these last few hours, and were unable to reach a reasonable conclusion of the outcome and future for humanity, almost costing every single human being here their own lives in the process of gambling against a greater foe. They sought to continue conflicts and devastate what is left of our beloved Mother Earth. They were even ready to launch nuclear strikes in civilized areas as resorts against them, yet they merely misunderstand that which they fight. During this particular interval, I was blessed with a beacon of knowledge. I could see the drastic error humanity has made, and how to correct it. As such, I have restored us to evolution and enlightenment. So now I guess you are thinking, how can such a man stand up here on this podium and say these things with no remorse, no shame? He speaks against everything we have fought so hard to protect, going against generations of work, development, and progress and reducing it to a pile of blood-stained sand. To think in such a manner as to be ignorant of the truth and potential offered to us, here and now. The enduring conflict has been brought to a close. This dark chapter of our history has had its time. It is now time for us to turn the page, start fresh, and begin anew as we move forward with the promises of brighter futures and advances beyond our wildest imaginations. A new beginning for mankind is upon us, and soon, with the coming days, weeks, months, and years, our new providers, nay, our benefactors, will guide us to prosperity and unification as a species. Thus, today marks a new beginning, the creation of a glorious unification between us and our former foe. Henceforth, a universal union, for all of mankind. I have been elected as host of this and a representative of the entirety of the human race. I promise you I will work with our new benefactors to build a better future. We are within the grasp of a new chapter of mankind. I leave you but a simple piece of advice for the coming days ahead. Be calm, be smart, be safe, be cooperative. The continuation of mankind's future depends on this.
The aftermath of the 7-hour war was horrific, completely overshadowing any former crime, murder, or genocide performed on the planet. Over 50% of the world's population was killed, a large sum being citizens, many of whom were forcibly conscripted in a hasty attempt to fight against the Combine. Over 60% of infrastructure, buildings, facilities, and landmarks were destroyed or heavily damaged. Breen's first rule as the interim administrator was reconstructing former cities into designated living centers for the remaining population. Various of these were constructed upon Earth, known as cities, colloquially by the remnants of humanity, and set with numbers to identify them. The remains of humanity were transferred almost randomly to these cities. Upon arrival, they would be provided with a citizen ID marking them as a citizen of Earth by the Combine, replacing prior passports or identification methods. Breen's second rule was appointing key figures as administrators of these cities. These commonly were people of high political outlooks or were of renown. Many of the city administrators were original owners of prior companies with heavy investment and finances, making them prime candidates and putting most, if not all of them, in Breen's pocket as he became the Earth administrator. Those not of the age of adulthood below 18 were separated and put into smaller external districts outside the cities, known as education camps, where they were indoctrinated into the Combine Empire and were taught to believe the Combine were superior and be all subservient to them. Otherwise, they endured harsh conditions, manual labor, construction, and experimentation. Those who did not comply received constant berating and even worse punishments. Those who survived these ordeals, few and far between, were scarred for life, and once they reached the age of 18, they were transferred to one of the many cities across Earth to continue their duties as a citizen. Once designated as a citizen, they were forced to join public work details, commonly referred to as work shifts, to provide work for them to do, and to provide the Combine with new tools, development, and general cleanup, and were made to live a constant repetition of this life, getting continuous food and drink from certified Dr. Breen's private reserves drink machines or from their daily rations. Most cities have organized union-approved groups such as the Civil Medical Union, which focus on medical research and act as the NHS of the union, and the Civil Workers Union, which provides the ability to own stores, and often are the ones who initiate the work shifts to be done. They also partake in research of their own for new products and technologies. A paramilitary police force known as the Metro Police Force, shortened to MPF or called Civil Protection or CP for short, was created to enforce law and order in the cities, perform upkeep on combined and human technologies, and douse rebel or resistance activity in cities. They are also partially dedicated to developing new technologies, such as weaponry, armor, robotics, etc. While being part of the Combine, civil protection officers are ordinary human volunteers who have willingly joined the Combine. Civil protection officers joined either for more privileges, such as additional food, better living conditions, rewards for completing objectives and tasks, increased authority and status over others, or out of genuine sympathy and identification with the Combine's aims. As such, civil protection officers do not receive biological modifications in any way. Not only this, but the Vortigaunt race was not left alone either, being hunted down by Combine Overwatch teams and enslaving the alien race as much as possible, dampening their powers thoroughly by forcing them to wear a collar and armbands similar to those worn by their former master, forcing them to work both as a manual laborer in the cities or being used in vorticells as a means of siphoning power for other sources. The world outside these camps and cities was filled with external alien wildlife and fauna. This made the exteriors of these locations and regions beyond a dangerous, inhospitable wasteland that was deadly to human life and the remnants of Earth's fauna. Alongside this, the Combine saw it fit to exploit the resources of Earth, an essential part being the water on Earth. It can be commonly seen that piers sit barren on the once watery shorelines where Earth's oceans had once occupied. Alongside this, Combine-related facilities such as Nova Prospect and the Depot were constructed from the remains of former high-security penitentiaries and adapted with Combine technology. These locations were used to detain and house either permanent prisoners of high renown, political influence, or those determined to be a threat to the Combine on either a permanent state or for processing into assets such as stalkers, Overwatch transhuman soldiers, synths, or to be used for experimentation by Union-certified scientists to conduct experiments and create new forms of hybrid creatures, superhumans and the like for the Combine to exploit as resources. Other facilities were also developed by the Combine, such as the Air Exchange, a multitude of facilities dotted across Earth, created to harness polluted air from the Zen fauna and convert it into both a breathable atmosphere for mankind, also for developing noxious gases breathable by other species such as the Advisors, and using similar gases for experimentation and future projects and weapons development. The Weather Control, also known as the Weather Station, was created and provided Earth cities worldwide with artificial weather patterns, allowing the Combine to control the weather at will and manipulate it as much as they desired across the remaining towns and facilities. Less essential structures such as the Manhack Arcade and similar entertainment venues were integrated within cities, providing citizens with entertainment after their hard work and labor. This involved citizens playing a video game wherein they control manhacks flying through the streets and killing fugitive citizens for points, ignorant that the manhacks they manage are accurate and that people are actually dying. The methods proved effective as they could keep the population from seemingly not knowing about performing their own culling of their kin, whilst the belief it was a video game kept their minds at ease. The main structure created during this time was the Citadel, an enormous, extremely tall structure built in the epicenter of a city known as City 17. It was designed to serve as the main base of operations and the headquarters of the Combine, from which they govern the Earth. It is the most essential structure and an important symbol of the Combine, as it houses the office of Earth Administrator Dr. Wallace Breen. It resembles a massive metallic skyscraper standing tens of thousands of feet in the air. It is a fortress that rises high into the sky and extends a significant distance underground. When viewed from above, It is a triangular structure and was crowned by a dark energy reactor. Its associated portal was the primary means of communication with off-world Combine forces. The Citadel's massive interior level can house an enormous army of Overwatch soldiers. The building is heavily mechanized, and entire sections can move to allow for mass deployment of airborne Combine units, such as city scanners, hunter choppers, and Combine gunships. On the upper floors of the Citadel, a large factory where Combine gunships are repaired and augmented can be found in the Citadel, and an oversized flap on the Citadel's exterior lifts up to allow the synths to exit the Citadel. The Citadel is entirely surrounded by enormous smart barriers, which crush buildings around the Citadel and prevent access from the streets, protecting the structure and preventing rebels from advancing. On one of the very top levels of the Citadel is Dr. Breen's office, believed to be where he transmits his Breencasts. Unlike the rest of the Citadel, Breen's office has a more classical human look, although Combine architecture is still a very dominating, albeit aesthetic, feature in the room. His office also contains a large set of monitors, which act as his personal computer, and from which he can communicate with contacts such as the advisors. It can be assumed that Breen lives in the Citadel and works in it, presumably never leaving it, unlike other city administrators, as some like to browse their cities and interact with the local population. The top of the Citadel contains the Combine's dark fusion reactor, which powers their tunneling entanglement device and allows them to tunnel into Earth from their universe. In addition, when the construction of the Citadel first started, a worldwide affecting feature was first created and installed known as the suppression field, which surrounded the entirety of Earth. It prevents human procreation as part of the Combine plan for total omnicide of the human species. The field's main effects are to bring the human birth rate down to 0 by prohibiting certain protein chains essential to embryonic development, making it impossible for conception to occur in any form. This ensures that the humans alive would be the last naturally born generation. Whilst not confirmed entirely, it is believed that the field forced biological sterility. Alongside the Citadel and suppression field was the Vault, a massive floating structure created by the Combine before the completion of the Citadel. Once located deep within the quarantine zone of City 17, it was an important and highly kept secret structure to the Combine. The Vault served as a technologically advanced prison of immense importance, as the Vault was actually housing and imprisoning one sole being of dangerous status, the G-Man. At an unknown time, the Combine could detect the whereabouts of G-Man, who was found inside an apartment building. The Combine, viewing the G-Man as an immense threat, constructed the vault that surrounded the entirety of the apartment building to capture and contain the enigmatic entity. The vault was heavily guarded, as the floating structure garrisoned many Combine soldiers, with another defending Combine force stationed on the ground directly beneath the vault. Eventually, however, the vault crashed into the quarantine zone, believed to have been caused by Alex Vance. Due to this, the G-Man is unknowingly set free unto the world, and no trace of the G-Man or Alex was found from the scene. However, some of humanity did not want to surrender themselves after the 7-hour war. Some continued fighting not just straight after, but for years after. Many members were prior conscripted individuals, full-time military members, or violent extremists. Some deviate from this and are scientists or political members who try to solve problems with words rather than violence. Here are some examples of notorious rebel groups seen after the 7-hour war. Avalanche, a group of planetologists working to protect the planet. As the organization grew, smaller cells began to splinter off. It took the appellation HQ to distinguish itself among the growing factions. Despite the many groups' different approaches and ideologies, they occasionally work together for their shared purpose, the destruction of the Combine. However, with many groups focusing on passive protest or acts of a non-violent nature, splinter groups formed, which instead turned their planet-protecting ideology into a weapon to fight. Caring about the planet and humanity, they fight against the Combine to save both from their clutches. Many consider this organization dangerous, with cells going rogue from the Central HQ's plans and employing extreme and dangerous methods to save the planet. The Resistance. The Resistance is a loose, covert rebel network of humans and Vortigaunts to defeat the Combine and restore their freedom. The Resistance has no central command structure due to the Combine's method of controlling the populace, as it was made incredibly difficult to try and coordinate anything without being caught. However, numerous central figures in the Resistance keep small clusters across the cities organized. The Resistance is divided into two areas: combat and research. Scientists like Eli Vance command the research division, whereas leaders such as Barney Calhoun and Alex Vance tend to control the combat section. Whilst boasting a significant ability and will to act, 95% of the Resistance's acts are performed secretly, hiding within shadows waiting for perfect opportunities, as you only get one chance in this life. The Underground Railroad, an underground movement of citizens and rebel associates who dedicate their lives and work to helping those who wish to leave the confines of the cities. This includes both humans and Vortigaunts. They created a series of safe houses that allowed them to escape, using coordinated safe houses and radios to lend to refugees. A former mining town, Ravenholm was once a high-resistance stronghold in the wastelands. It was previously inhabited by refugees who escaped from the Combine-controlled City 17 to join the Resistance. The town remained hidden for a while but was eventually discovered and attacked with a massive bombardment of headcrab shells, slaughtering its inhabitants by turning them into multiple types of zombies. The massacre resulted in the annihilation of the settlement and was consequently abandoned. However, a singular survivor lived named Father Grigori. He alone built various traps around Ravenholm to dispatch the former humans, and survived and thrived with relative ease thanks to his quick thinking and ingenuity. He eventually found the body of Adrian Shepard, who was only just released from stasis by the G-Man, in Ravenholm. Excited by the prospect of companionship, Grigori dragged Shepard's body to a boarded-up and semi-secure abandoned children's hospital, and Adrian can recover from his injuries sustained in Black Mesa. Shepard eventually regains consciousness, immediately greeted with the sight of Grigori, hastily running into the room and slamming the door shut behind him. Grigori then uses a machine rigged with live head crabs to extract their blood. He injects himself with the blood on the right side of his neck, which he believes helps build immunity to their bite, and begins cooking head crab stew for Shepard. At this point, Grigori begins to explain human history since the Black Mesa events, as Adrian was still wearing his hazardous environment combat unit uniform. Zombies abruptly swarm the room and destroy Grigori's barricades, forcing them to evacuate. From there, the two embark on a mission to escape Ravenholm. However, Grigori has developed an addiction to injecting headcrab blood into his body, causing the right side of his neck and head to mutate, something he initially tries to hide from Shepard by wearing a hooded jacket. Once the mutation reaches a peak, he almost turns into a full-fledged monster. But luckily, Adrian can stave off the infection by using a cure that was created by Grigori prior. The two run into various new creatures in Ravenholm, zombie monkeys that have gone feral due to Grigori injecting them with headcrab blood, zombies with acidic and corrosive bile that they can fling and is highly toxic, along with the typical sights of zombies: headcrabs, fast headcrabs, poison headcrabs, and fast and poison zombies too. The two then run into the source of the city's constant headcrab and zombie threat, a big mama pod. The two can destroy it and escape Ravenholm, but not before Adrian and Grigori are separated and cut off. Grigori then chooses to remain in Ravenholm and continue the fight, whilst Adrian escapes from Ravenholm. However, before he can escape further, the G-Man confronts him. As he merely explains, this was a test to see if he could live up to the legend of one of his other assets. Thus, he is put back into stasis for a second time. Mitchell Shepard, brother of Adrian Shepard, was one of the Hazardous Environment Combat Unit at Black Mesa. During these events, he comes in contact with an HEV suit-wearing man, whom he believes to be Gordon Freeman. The man beats him with a crowbar and leaves him to die. Mitchell swears that however long it takes, he will kill Freeman. He was saved by a mysterious benefactor revealed to be the G-Man during his recovery at a hospital in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Before the U.S. government can silence him as a witness to what happened at Black Mesa, the G-Man appears and offers him a deal. Unbeknownst to Mitchell, He goes completely missing until late 2003, when he wakes up in the hospital, now abandoned, amid the 7-hour war. Escaping the hospital and meeting Nick and his squad, who informs Mitchell of the events unfolding. Mitchell and the group head to Brandon Saint while fighting and defending against the Combine's invading forces. They make it into a hotel, barely holding their own against the powers of the Combine. Here, Nick and Mitchell get separated, and Mitchell ends up running into Adam, who informs Mitchell of a shortcut to Brandon Saint. Around 3 hours into the 7-hour war, Mitchell Shepard can escape into the canals, fighting all sorts of Zen, Race X, and Combine forces along the way. Adam follows swiftly behind, providing fire support with a sniper rifle. Escaping the canals and back into the city, meeting up with multiple groups of soldiers who can barely defend against the superior forces. He and Adam run into the city's metro system, where they meet up with Colonel Q and his remaining group, including Soldier Larry. During this time, they set up a temporary emplacement here and overheard Dr. Wallace Breen's speech to the world on the radio. The 7-hour war ended. However, most of the conflict had not ceased, as many still fought for their freedom. Mitchell and the group escaped onto a train by running the metro system and reaching the topside train station. The Combine forces followed suit as they exited and attempted to cease their escape. However, the group can fend them off until they escape. However, Colonel Q and Larry are both gravely wounded and pass away as they run. They end up at a camp with many surviving U.S. Marines, Black Ops soldiers, and conscripted citizens who survived the war. They are informed of a ship at a dock in California, which would allow them to leave the mainland and find some form of escapism. They go in a truck and a Humvee. Eventually, they make it to the port in California and the ship as they meet up with Captain Roosevelt, the current captain of the boat known as the Avalon Vale, who takes command of the remaining group as they all get on the ship and escape from the mainland. After running, they breathe a sign of relief before a sudden explosion hits the boat, causing Captain Roosevelt to be killed. Mitchell is then made the captain of Avalon Vale. 3 years after the 7-hour war, Avalon Vale is still on open water despite the Combine's occupation and takeover of Earth. Mitchell heads to the remains of Alaska, the area completely frozen over by the weather control systems. Mitchell finds a Combine facility where he meets Boris. Unbeknownst to Mitchell, what he thought was a weapons creation factory was an education camp alongside a cremator factory that creates the cremators. Managed by the Combine for those under the age of 18, Mitchell destroys the camp, taking all the surviving kids and adults onto Avalon Vale and providing them freedom and life. One of these is Boris's young daughter, Sasha. Escaping and saving them from their fate as Combine servants. Learning that the one who left him injured in Black Mesa may still be out there, Mitchell Shepard goes undercover and, using fake identification, can make it into City 17. Another citizen goes before Mitchell and can successfully detonate a suicide vest and cause significant damage to the train station. Unaware of this, Mitchell uses this time to escape from any civil protection and use it to avoid garnering any unwanted attention to himself. However, after some time, Mitchell Shepard is caught and brought directly to Dr. Wallace Breen's office. However, it is revealed that Boris was working in cahoots with the Combine this whole time, purposefully keeping the location of Avalon Vale hidden whilst the children were taken from the factory. Mitchell concludes that he wants to surrender all his assets and work with the Combine in exchange for working together to hunt down and capture Freeman. Boris works as an interim between Mitchell and Breen. However, Breen agrees with this plan, making sure that it will backfire on Mitchell. Mitchell became too cocky as his years escaping the Combine had worked without fail before this. Mitchell hunts down various cells of the Lambda Resistance, whom the Combine have said are aligned with the Freemen, eventually being captured by Resistance members. Adam confronts Mitchell during his escape, where it is revealed that Mitchell was not being held by the Resistance, but was actually in Nova Prospect, intending to be killed. Mitchell and Adam escape both the rebels and Combine forces. Adam then locks a cell behind Mitchell after he lowers his guard. As it is revealed, Adam is in cahoots with his own orders from a higher power. The G-Man meets Mitchell and informs him that he is relieved of duty and no longer an asset, and essentially leaves him to die, with both the Resistance attempting to kill him and the Combine betraying him. It was revealed by the G-Man that Adam was the one who injured him and left him to die in Black Mesa. Knowing that he had nowhere left to run, Mitchell Shepard performs a last stand on a small Combine-established pier. However, he is saved by Nick using a helicopter to pick him up. However, using this, the Combine can track down and locate Avalon Vale once the aircraft returns. Returning to Avalon Vale, Mitchell directly confronts Adam and kills him. However, before any members could escape, the Combine ordered an orbital strike on Avalon Vale, as its location had been found. This caused the complete destruction of the Avalon Vale, leaving no survivors of Mitchell Shepard's crew and killing all on board, tying up loose ends. This was one of the more notorious revolutions against the Combine, and its name was plastered on all Combine propaganda as a symbol of keeping the public safe from an insane sociopathic madman who had since gone insane after the Black Mesa incident. The year is now 2020. The world humanity once knew is completely gone and replaced with a dystopian government, and hopes of freedom are at an all-time low. With the suppression field up, meaning those surviving were the last remaining humans left on the planet, nobody is truly sure of the future of the human race. All that remains for certain is that whomever you are, whatever you are, and whatever choices you make are yours, and will shape you and the world as a response. Just remember Newton's third law of motion. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So, be who you want to be. Live the life you wish to live, and make friends and enemies you want to fight with and against. But remember that you are not invincible, no matter the circumstances. You will not live forever, and there are those in power who will ensure that. The stage is set, the camera is on, and the world is watching you. All we are waiting for is your next move. So what will it be?